Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Coming up in the next hour. India's Finance Minister presents interim budget for 2024-25, accords priority to the poor, women, youth and farmers. With the vision to make India a developed nation by 2047, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announces increase in capital expenditure outlay by 11.1%, says massive tripling of capital expenditure outlay in the last 4 years resulted in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi terms the interim budget as inclusive and innovative, says the budget is reflection of the young aspirations of young India. European Union agrees on a new $54 billion aid package for Ukraine. Farmers from Italy and Spain descend on Brussels, demanding relief from taxes, rising costs and cheap imports. In sports, Team India lock horns with spirited England in the second Test match in Port City, Visakhapatnam from Friday. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Thursday presented the interim budget for 2024-25 in the Parliament. Transforming the lives of poor, women, youth and farmers remain the key focus of the budget. The Indian Finance Minister also announced new plans for India to reach net zero target. The budget also points out some of the bright spots of the economy. Considerable importance has also been given to blue economy.
With focus on achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat or a developed India by 2047, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Thursday presented the interim budget for 2024-25 in Parliament. Sitharaman said her government is focused on improving the conditions of poor, women, youth and farmers. Finance Minister said that government assisted 250 million people out of multi-dimensional poverty in last 10 years.
With the pursuit of Sabka Saath, in these 10 years, the government has assisted 25 crore people to get freedom from multi-dimensional poverty.
Farmers' welfare and boosting rural demand is one of the main highlights of interim budget 2024-25 presented by Finance Minister.
Welfare of Annadata. Farmers are our Annadata. Every year under PM Kisan Samman Yojana, direct financial assistance is provided to 11.8 crore farmers, including marginal and small farmers.
Pointing out at some of the bright spots of the economy, Sitharaman announced that the FDI inflow during 2014-23 was $596 billion, marking a golden era, and this is twice the inflow during 2005-14. The interim budget 2024-25 has put considerable importance on blue economy. For prompting climate-resilient activities for Blue Economy 2.0, a scheme will be launched for restoration and adaptation measures and coastal aquaculture and mariculture with an integrated multi-sectoral approach.
For promoting climate-resilient activities for Blue Economy 2.0, a scheme for restoration and adaptation measures and coastal aquaculture and mariculture with integrated and multi-sectoral approach will be launched.
Minister also announced that 3 major economic railway corridor programs are set to roll out, including port connectivity corridors. Projects for port connectivity and tourism infrastructure and amenities will be taken on islands, including Lakshadweep. This will help in generating employment.
To address the emerging fervor for domestic tourism, Honorable Speaker, sir, projects for port connectivity, tourism infrastructure and amenities will be taken up on our islands, including Lakshadweep.
In a move to steer India towards a greener future, Minister also unveiled a comprehensive plan aimed at achieving the ambitious net zero target by 2070 in Budget 2024.
Towards meeting our commitment for net zero by 2070, the following measures will be taken. Viability gap funding will be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy, phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in compressed natural gas for transport and piped natural gas for domestic purposes will be mandated. Financial assistance will be provided for procurement of biomass aggregation machinery to support collection.
India's finance minister stressed that this government is working with an approach to development that is all-round, all-pervasive and all-inclusive. Fuzail Ahmed reporting for DD India.
India's finance minister today presented the interim budget. The government is committed to make the country Viksit Bharat, or a developed nation, by 2047. Here's more.
A vote of accountability. In a budget speech that contextualized India's economic management in a global order, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman spoke of a vision of the Amrit Kal and India as a developed country by 2047. She said the country had shown the way during turbulent economic times as a consensus builder to find solutions to global problems.
The recently announced India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is a strategic and economic game changer for India and others. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister, the corridor, and I quote, will become the basis of world trade for hundreds of years to come, and history will remember that this corridor was initiated on Indian soil.
India is moving forward towards a Viksit Bharat, or a developed India. Much of that vision sees a transition to green energy. The Budget 2024 makes significant announcements towards green transition. 10 million households will get up to 300 units of free electricity every month through the adoption of rooftop solarization. This is in keeping with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's resolve made at the time of the Ram Temple consecration.
Through rooftop solarization, 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. This scheme follows the resolve of Honorable Prime Minister on the historic day of consecration of Sri Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. Savings up to 15 to 18,000 rupees annually for households from free solar electricity and selling the surplus to the distribution companies. Charging of electric vehicles. Entrepreneurship opportunities for a large number of vendors for supply and installation. Employment opportunities for the youth with technical skills in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance.
The government is also providing viability gap funding for offshore wind energy projects. E-vehicle ecosystem will get a boost through greater government support for manufacturing and adoption of e-vehicles in public transport. The FDI inflow between 2014 and 2023 has been doubled compared to the period 2004 to 2013. The government has also been aiming to maximize the multiplier effect of capital expenditure and has increased it by a numerical aesthetical 11.1% to 11,11,111 crore rupees.
Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure outlay in the past 4 years, resulting in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment creation, the outlay for the next year is being increased by 11.1% to 11,11,111 crore rupees. This would be 3.4% of our GDP.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman committed to reducing the fiscal deficit to 5.1% in the current budget and to reduce it further to below 4.5% by 2025-26, a clear path of fiscal consolidation. She committed the interim budget to the House with a reference to the economy being firmly placed on a high sustainable growth path. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's finance minister also stressed on Indian government's focus on inclusive development. She emphasized on the development infrastructure facilities, railways, aviations and more.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman laid stress on Indian government's continued focus on ensuring all-round, all-pervasive and all-inclusive development. She added that the government's focus is on 4 major castes: poor, women, youth and farmer. She laid out government's plan to uplift each of them in detail in her budget speech. Another highlight of the budget speech was continued emphasis on improving the infrastructure facilities in the nation. The capital expenditure outlay has been further increased by 11.1% to reach a whopping figure of more than 11 lakh crore.
Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure outlay in the past 4 years, resulting in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment creation, the outlay for the next year is being increased by 11.1% to 11,111 crore rupees. This would be 3.4% of our GDP.
Government is also ensuring that railways, aviation and urban transport sectors get the deserved importance.
3 major economic railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are energy, mineral and cement corridor, number 2, port connectivity corridors, and number 3, high traffic density corridors.
The finance minister also said that the centre will bring out a white paper on the state of the economy till 2014 and learn lessons from the mismanagement of those years.
The crisis of those years has been overcome and the economy has been put firmly on a high sustainable growth path with all-round development. It is now appropriate to look at where we were then. I repeat, it is now appropriate to look at where we were then till 2014 and where we are now, only for the purpose of drawing lessons from the mismanagement of those years. The government will lay a white paper on table of the House.
The finance minister also promised that the full budget in July will witness the detailed document for realizing the potential and ensuring a developed India by 2047. Bureau Report, DD India.
And presenting the budget, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also stressed that the government aims to transform India into a developed country by 2047. She reiterated that the vision of developed India will be in harmony with nature and modern infrastructure.
During the interim budget speech, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman reiterated the ironclad commitment of the NDA government to make India a developed nation by 2047. She added that the vision for a developed India will be in harmony with nature and with modern infrastructure.
The next 5 years will be years of unprecedented development and golden moments to realize the dream of developed India by 2047. The trinity of demography, democracy, and diversity, backed by Sabka Prayas, has the potential to fulfill aspirations of every Indian.
She added that in the full budget in July, a detailed roadmap for Viksit Bharat will be presented.
Every challenge of the pre-2014 era was overcome through our economic management and our governance. These have placed the country on a resolute path of sustained high growth. This has been possible through right policies, true intentions, and appropriate decisions. In the full budget in July, Honorable Speaker, Our government will present a detailed roadmap for our pursuit of Vikasit Bharat.
Further, the FM stressed that the government's focus on pursuing economic reforms will remain unwavering. She added that the government will take up the next generation reforms and work on its effective implementation.
Our government will adopt economic policies that foster and sustain growth, facilitate inclusive and sustainable development, improve productivity, create opportunities for all, help them enhance their capabilities, and contribute to generation of resources to power investments and fulfill aspirations.
The finance minister listed steps to tackle many other challenges to ensure India remains on the path of becoming a developed nation.
The government will form a high-powered committee for an extensive consideration of the challenges arising from fast population growth and demographic changes.
The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman listed steps taken to sustain the unprecedented infrastructure push and meet green energy demands, announcing an 11.1% hike in capital expenditure outlay. Bureau Report, DD India.
Presenting the interim budget 2024, India's finance minister said that the government will provide free vaccine for cervical cancer for girls aged between 9 to 14 years. According to World Health Organization, cervical cancer is the fourth most common cancer among women. It is a major cause of cancer mortality in women. Healthcare experts have welcomed the government's move to vaccinate young girls against the disease.
The first and foremost initiative, which can be a boon for all teenage girls, especially between 9 and 14, is a comprehensive cervical cancer vaccination program, which the government has taken very seriously. Due to the prohibitory cost of the vaccine, the common man could not afford these vaccines.
And we're heading for a short break. Still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails the budget presented today, says the budget has reflection of young aspirations of a young India. European Union leaders unanimously agree to extend $54 billion in new aid to Ukraine. And ship routes being diverted as the Red Sea crisis deepens.
Why is the world preparing for a second Trump presidency? I connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that eastern region of India will be the growth engine for the country. Sitharaman said the government will undertake next generation reforms and build consensus with states and stakeholders for its effective implementation.
When I say the eastern region, I'm talking about Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Orissa, making sure that they will become the engines of growth for the new Amritkal India that we are trying to use as a bridge towards leading to Vikasit Bharat 2047. And Eastern India, I've missed out on West Bengal, please add it, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, Chhattisgarh and West Bengal.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget presented today. He said the budget has a reflection of the young aspirations of young India.
ये बजट विकसित भारत के 4 स्तंभ युवा, गरीब, महिला और किसान सभी को एम्पावर करेगा। निर्मला जी का ये बजट देश के भविष्य के निर्माण का बजट है। इस बजट में 2047 के विकसित भारत की नींव को मजबूत करने की गारंटी है।
India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goel speaks to DD India correspondent Taposh Bhattacharya on Interim Budget 24. The minister termed the budget pragmatic and progressive.
Joining me is Union Minister Piyush Goel to talk about the interim budget that was presented by Finance Minister Narendra Modi. Sir, first reaction, how do you see this budget? We are on course to become a Viksit Bharat. How do you see this budget in that regard?
I think this is a very pragmatic budget, very progressive, forward-looking, and very well balances the work that has been done over the last 10 years, preparing India with a very strong macroeconomic fundamentals, with a mood of the nation ready to aspire for big challenges, a good future for its people, and maintaining fiscal prudence. It has given a direction to the country for the next many years of continuous growth, development, inclusive and sustainable development, development which takes welfare to the last man at the bottom of the pyramid, and which builds upon the various steps taken in the last 10 years to make India a developed nation.
Much appreciated your time. So that was Union Minister Piyush Goel saying that it's a wholesome budget and India is on course to becoming a developed country in 2047. With Kamath, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
And Amitabh Kant, former CEO of Niti Aayog, the public policy think tank of Indian government, said the interim budget is reflective of the confidence of the government that will come into long-term budget.
I think the budget is very reflective of inclusive growth. It's reflective of the confidence of the government that will come in to do a long-term budget, because it believes in macroeconomic fundamentals. It believes in bringing in financial discipline. It believes in no populism. It believes in ensuring capex expenditure. It believes in putting the priorities of the country first and foremost.
K.V. Subramanian, Executive Director of International Monetary Fund (IMF) and former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, called the interim budget judicious and visionary.
On tourism and on the 75,000 crore for states, industry loans, I think that is good news. So overall, that's basically how I would assess it. Judicious on the fiscal front, non-populist because it's more of the same, and visionary because many of the steps on innovation and on capex, etc.
And the European Union leaders unanimously agreed on Thursday to extend 50 billion euros, that's about $54 billion, in new aid to Ukraine. The agreement comes after weeks of wrangling with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who had vetoed the aid package last December. Before the summit started, EU leaders piled pressure on Hungary to lift its block, telling Orban he had to pick sides in the existential challenge posed by Russia's war. Orban, who's cultivated close ties with Moscow, has stepped up criticism of EU's strategy to prop up Ukraine with financial and military aid as Russia's war against his neighbor nears two-year mark. And DD India correspondent Ishan Garg is joining us live from Brussels. Ishan, help us understand the importance of this package by EU for Ukraine, and despite the objections from Hungary, how did they overcome those?
Well, it's not really public information what goes on inside this building, but there are several reports that are coming out suggesting that the politicians have made a deal with one another. There are reports suggesting that it was after Prime Minister Viktor Orban got into a room with Germany's Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron from France, that soon after that he decided that he is going to back down. Now, he had been blocking this deal for quite a long time, but now it seems like the Council has made certain concessions. Reports coming out that two of the provisions that the Council has agreed on, one of which is a periodic review of the money that is being sent to Ukraine, and another of a EU Commission looking at the facility in 2025. Those two clauses have perhaps been added to assuage some of the concerns of Mr. Viktor Orban, and it seems like this is a compromise that the leaders have reached. And analysts are saying that this allows the European Union to keep sending more money to Ukraine, this 50 billion euro package, even though their friends across the pond in the United States, their money is held up in Congress. And at the same time, Prime Minister Viktor Orban could go back to home claiming that he's been victorious in this negotiation. So it's a bit of a win-win situation. And in the end, the good news that analysts say, which has come out of this meeting, is the fact that Ukraine is getting this money just a few days before it's the anniversary of Russia's aggression against it.
And the second big issue that EU must deal with, as farmers' anger grows across the continent, what are they hoping to achieve as they all arrive in Brussels at the EU meet?
Well, many farmers who are protesting not too far from where I am. I'm inside the European Union Council building where the 27 heads of state were meeting, and just a few meters down the road there are hundreds of tractors currently blocking the roads. And many of the farmers, they are coming here from all over Belgium, but there are certainly groups that have accumulated in this city from various parts of Europe. And the common concern that a lot of them have is the fact that their profits have been declining. They are blaming EU's trade policies, saying that the bloc has been holding trade negotiations with various countries, which could potentially result in cheaper imports coming in and flooding the agricultural markets in the continent. And now we are seeing that the EU leaders are also looking to engage with the farmers, especially as the EU Parliament, the European Parliament elections are coming up in June. So we are seeing that the Commission and the Council are going to listen to the farmers, and many of the farmers say that they are going to continue with their blockade and with their demonstrations until their demands are met.
Ishan, thank you for those updates. Moving on, the Houthis of Yemen have threatened to retaliate against the British-American-led action in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, US has said that UK's partnership to address Houthis' attacks is pivotal. Troubled by this crisis, many companies have diverted routes of their ships, while a ship carrying around 14,000 sheep and 2,000 cattle docked in Australia on Thursday after abandoning journey through the Red Sea.
Started with the Middle East crisis, Houthis' attacks on civilian ships in the Red Sea have become a widespread concern for many countries. At least 20 countries had joined the US-led Maritime Protection Alliance in the Red Sea in December last year, including the UK as an important ally against the Houthis' attack. Meeting UK's Defence Minister Grant Shapps at the Pentagon, US Secretary of Defence Austin Lloyd reiterated on Wednesday that partnership with UK is pivotal in this fight.
The United Kingdom's partnership is pivotal to addressing the Houthis' reckless and illegal attacks against military vessels and commercial shipping in the Red Sea. And we can see Iran's hand here as well, providing the Houthis with advanced conventional weapons, intelligence, and expertise. The US and the UK are deeply committed to the rules-based international order and defending the freedom of navigation.
You're absolutely right about your comments. We're working together on so many different fronts right now. Again, the Iranian-backed Houthis causing such discomfort to international shipping, illegally acting like pirates and thugs in the way that they're behaving, and with a coalition of other countries, but nonetheless with action with the UK and US, we are once again standing shoulder to shoulder to try to ensure that there is a line that should not be crossed when it comes to international merchant shipping.
Reacting to a US statement which claims to have shot down Houthis' surface-to-air missile on Tuesday, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Shareh said in a statement that the Yemeni armed forces had targeted an American merchant ship named KOI.
The naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a specific military operation targeting an American merchant ship KOI that was heading to the ports of occupied Palestine with several appropriate naval missiles that directly hit the vessel. This operation occurred just a few hours after Yemeni naval forces have targeted with several naval missiles the American destroyer USS Goel in the Red Sea, and hit was accurate and direct.
India has deployed at least a dozen warships east of the Red Sea to provide security against pirates and has investigated more than 250 vessels as Western powers focus on attacks by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis. Troubled by this crisis, many companies have diverted the routes of their ships, while a ship carrying around 14,000 sheep and 2,000 cattle docked in Australia on Thursday after abandoning a journey through the Red Sea. Ravindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on Wednesday for the closure of UN Palestinian Refugee Agency UNRWA as his forces conduct more airstrikes in Gaza amid release of hostages in the enclave. Donors, including United States, have paused funding pending an investigation, but aid agencies say ending UNRWA operations would wreck humanitarian efforts in devastated Gaza. Donors are demanding a swift investigation before resuming funding. Israel has accused some UNRWA staff of involvement in the October 7th Hamas assault in southern Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu says UNRWA's mission must be terminated.
It's time that the international community and the UN itself understand that UNRWA's mission has to end. It is self-perpetuating also in its desire to keep alive the Palestinian refugee issue. And we need to get other UN agencies and other aid agencies replacing UNRWA if we're going to solve the problem of Gaza as we intend to do.
Israel welcomes the decision of many countries to suspend their funding to UNRWA and calls for an in-depth, independent and transparent investigation into the agency's conduct in the Gaza Strip, both regarding the involvement of UNRWA employees in the October 7th massacre and regarding the employment of Hamas operatives and the involvement of terrorist elements in its activities.
The Hamas on Wednesday released a video showing clashes with Israeli soldiers in Gaza. The video posted on Hamas's Telegram channel shows clashes with Israeli soldiers and vehicles in Maghazi and Burezi camps in central Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Israel's military said on Thursday that its troops killed dozens of Hamas terrorists over the past day in encounters that raged across the Gaza Strip. United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met top Israeli official Ron Dermer in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. The White House spokesperson John Kirby during a briefing said that the meeting between Sullivan and Dermer focused on the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza and advancing negotiations for the release of hostages taken by Hamas. The meeting comes on the heels of Jake's meeting with the families of American hostages and his discussion with Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Al Thani, on Tuesday to reach a deal for the release of hostages held since the conflict between Hamas and Israel erupted on October 7th.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had a chance to meet today with the Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, while he was here in town. They, of course, discussed the situation on the ground in Gaza. Also had an opportunity to talk about continued efforts to increase the flow of humanitarian assistance into the people of Gaza. And, of course, they talked about our ongoing collective efforts to get all the hostages released, get them back home with their families where they belong. And those negotiations and discussions are certainly ongoing right now.
And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and UN Coordinator Sigrid Kaag on Wednesday discussed optimizing humanitarian aid and post-conflict reconstruction in Gaza. Blinken committed to swift collaboration with Israel and Egypt to ensure aid in Gaza, while the UN envoy highlighted the challenges and stressed collaboration with the Security Council.
We'll be working very closely closely with Cyprus, with Israel, with Egypt, with other concerned parties. In the first instance, to maximize the assistance that's getting in, but not only getting into Gaza, getting to people who need it within Gaza, including in the north. And in that, the United Nations remains an essential and vital partner. At the same time, we have to work through the terrible allegations that have been raised with regard to some UNRWA personnel. That's absolutely essential, and we'll be looking to see that the necessary work is done to deal with that and address that situation.
Now, there are a number of issues we also need to keep talking about, and that is deconfliction, safe conditions to deliver aid, not only for the humanitarian workers, but also for those who receive it. We also need to talk about aid diversion, and any potential risk that aid gets into the wrong hand needs to be prevented, and if it happens, we need to act very swiftly in a very transparent and credible manner.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the drone deal offers significant potential to further advance strategic technology cooperation with India and military cooperation in the wider region.
So I'll say that generally the U.S. India defense partnership has seen significant growth over the past decade. This is a proposed sale that was announced during Prime Minister Modi's visit last year. We believe it offers significant potential to further advance strategic technology cooperation with India and military cooperation in the region. Of course, Congress plays, as you know, an important role in the U.S. arms transfer process. We routinely consult with members of Congress on the Foreign Affairs Committees before our formal notification so we can address questions that they might have. But I don't have any comment on when that formal notification might take place.
And we're heading for a short break. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Key takeaways of the interim budget 24-25. Former Chief Minister of Indian state of Jharkhand sent to judicial custody for a day in connection with land scam. And Indian Navy has declared 2024 as the year of naval civilians.
Pills like candy for every sniffle and cough. Is excessive use of antibiotics creating superbugs? And does this mean that antibiotics will no longer be effective? I connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. India's Finance Minister presents interim budget for 2024-25, accords priority to the poor, women, youth and farmers. With a vision to make India a developed nation by 2047, Finance Minister announces increase in capital expenditure outlay by over 11%, says massive tripling of capital expenditure outlay in the last 4 years resulted in multiplier impact on growth and employment. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi terms the interim budget as inclusive and innovative, says the budget is a reflection of young aspirations of a young India. European Union agrees on a new $54 billion aid package for Ukraine. Farmers from Italy and Spain descend on Brussels demanding relief from taxes, rising costs and cheap imports. Let's now talk about the key takeaways of the interim budget of India. Joining me is a special guest, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, DG Research and Information System for Developing Countries, and also an eminent economist joining me from Delhi. Good evening and welcome, Professor Chaturvedi. Now, talk about the budget with an eye on the vision of developed India by 2047. How well does the interim budget document articulate the priorities of the present?
Thank you, Shubhendu. I think the budget articulates quite well, both in terms of sustainability and the international commitments that India should have with partner countries, the larger efforts in terms of overcoming the disruptions that we have seen in supply chain. But also at the domestic level, the budget has tried to address this in three different ways. One, as you just now mentioned, quoting Prime Minister, in terms of employment, sustainability and expectations of the youth. So it has mashed all the three very well. It has also tried to strengthen the capex, the idea of bringing in capital expenditure with 11.11% jump over last year, which itself had seen a jump of 33%. So you find a huge commitment right from 2021 budget till now, where capital expenditure has gone up, infrastructure has multiplied. And if you see the way good governance has come in infrastructure projects, is something very interesting, which the day before yesterday, Department of Economic Affairs released India Economic Review document. And Shubhendu, it very clearly showed that with consistent monitoring of projects, we could deliver more than 2,000 projects. And these 2,000 projects with 50 lakh crores have given the kind of impetus that we needed for infrastructure.
Right, and we talk about the, right,
yeah.
Please go on, sir.
The second point, Shubhendu, that I feel is extremely important is in terms of emphasis on innovation, taking science further and giving a push with the 1 lakh crore budget fund that has now been proposed, which would give a huge fillip to startups. It would give major fillip to the new areas of research which are needed. Finance Minister also identified areas related to sustainability, areas related to the different kinds of bio-based industrial development for bioeconomy for India, and she also talked about skills. So all the three dimensions which would benefit agriculture, health, and youth in a major way.
Absolutely, and if you talk about those pillars of India's growth story, the poor, farmers, youth, and women. We talk about women in particular. Women-led development is the philosophy with India is moving ahead. There's an all-round attention. There is focus on education. There's reference to STEM education. There is entrepreneurship, the Lakpati Didi, and health, the very important cancer vaccination, and more.
Yes, if you see adding more energy to bottom is something that many economists have been talking about for decades. For last several years, central government and has been motivating state governments also to add more to SHGs, the self-help groups. And the DDs that you referred to, the target, if you recall, was initially for 1 crore, which expectation was 2 crores, but Finance Minister today has given a huge push to it by announcing 3 crores. And this would be of those women partners in self-help groups who have earned almost 1 lakh per annum. And these Lakpati Didis are now going to be 3 crores. So you can imagine the amount of resources that are getting transferred to the bottom. And they are going to add more purchasing power at that level, not only for themselves, but also for society and the circularity of the economy. So you can very well imagine the kind of inclusive economic growth that we had remarked. She mentioned about the philosophy of development since 2014, and she articulated in terms of how the development has to be inclusive, how development has to touch everyone, and how it can be bringing in all dimensions of our economic development together with less carbon footprint. So that dimension, I think, Shubhendu, is very important. If you look at the way she defined GDP, of governance, development, and performance. Yes. That also narrates quite well how economic development vision is coming up.
On the idea of performance and the kind of report card that the interim budget also presents, how successfully would you say the welfare interventions in the agriculture sector have been able to address the rural stress, and what is there in this budget for the farmers to look forward to?
If you see, there are 5 different sort of announcements that have been made for agriculture. All of them are extremely important, very timely, and needed in terms of building on further with what has already been done. There is a very clear budgetary allocation that Agriculture Ministry had suggested, required, and needed. That part, I think, has been addressed to a great extent. The second is high-tech addition in the agriculture. So the idea of bringing in self-reliance within the oil seeds is something which is going to go forward in a major way. 5 crops the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned in our budget speech. Second is a major push to dairy industry. Specific announcements have been made in terms of not only the quantum of budget that has gone up, but also the nature of technologies that would be providing these kind of facilities to our farmers. The third, and I think extremely important, is the food processing sector, which has also been identified as major dimension of new employment creation, creating values through agriculture. So value added in agriculture had already multiplied. More efforts were made in terms of identifying the priority sector with full focus on connecting it with the nature of microcredit that was required. Fourth, I think, is extremely important, where new irrigation plants have been announced. New budgetary allocation has come in. And I think if you juxtapose the RD budget to this, you find a greater emphasis what Jai Anusandhan, that Prime Minister said, and Finance Minister echoed that in her budget speech, also brings in the research and development agenda closer to it, along with support for startups. So all the 5 that I see are bringing in digitalization, bringing in greater accountability, and more resources for value addition in agriculture.
And particularly the funds for research and development that you mentioned, yes. A fund of about 1 lakh crore. I mean, huge potential for startups, entrepreneurs, and the young.
Exactly, and Suvendu, if you recall, sporadic attempts have been made to push in, yes. But the nature of research has multiplied. If you recall, just a week ago, DPIIT issued statistics where it showed patents in 2023 from yes. India have gone up, and they are close to 75,000. Can you imagine the energy that we have created in our R&D system? Just last year, India crossed China by publishing scientific papers in international peer-reviewed journals. So what we are seeing in last 3 years, the surge of scientific achievements, the number of patents that are going up, patent process has been streamlined. So a new environment for research is coming up in a major way. Exactly, Suvendu, like what you are seeing in sports, where yes. medals are multiplying. And these are the medals for scientists, where their publications are coming, their patents are coming. And now this mega budget for 1 lakh crore fund that has come in. And imagine 50-year interest-free resource availability would be there. Yes, so this would be, I think, a major push for research. And this, Suvendu, if we are seeing jump from 5 trillion to 7 trillion, 5 trillion we would reach, as Prime Minister said, within his term, and that would be much earlier than later. But 5 to 7 would require a far greater and far more focused attempt on R&D and research advancements with innovation.
And I see that innovation is also playing out in a very interesting manner as far as ensuring energy justice to masses is concerned. The manner in which the solar rooftop does not only fulfill your energy needs, it could also help supplant your budget. Yeah. Then there is wind energy, there is oil-based infrastructure and EV infrastructure.
Exactly, and Finance Minister even gave figure of saving 13 to 17,000 yes. per household, and that would be, imagine, also reduction in carbon footprint at household level. So the idea of life, the lifestyle for sustainable development that we articulated during COP and later on at G20, I think is getting manifested through these kind of. A national life mission. It is also about adding new dimensions of solar panels are going to give major fillip to it.
And finally, Professor Chaturvedi, what will be the key global headwinds as India marches towards its vision of a developed country? There is, of course, the India, Mid East, Europe corridor that the finance minister mentioned, but then there are challenges in the Red Sea zone and elsewhere. How do you see the road ahead?
We should analyze global headwinds at 3 different levels, and I think we would have to be very clear in terms of subdues and uneven expansion that we are seeing in inflation across the global scenario, and improving prospects for our soft landing would be important. The supply chain disruptions are a major worry for us, and I think if we see insulating ourselves from the spillover effects of US and other global economies, the autonomy that we require for our policy pronouncements, this government has firmly established that. Be that Basel norms or bullying from IMF, misinterpretation of data, and even blaming us for managing our foreign exchange. IMF has been proved wrong, and we have established India's autonomy in our decision making and defining how we take inflation-related decision and their management forward. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 comes in more from our ideas in terms of how global connectivity comes in. With BRI and with other initiatives, we have been constantly challenged. Red Sea, as you rightly said, has further accentuated the crisis. The delay in ships, even going via Cape of Good Hope, they are taking much more time than ever. Countries, the axis of resistance with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, all the 3 together have targeted specific ships and specific entities. Insurance and reinsurance have gone up. So we require new sort of connectivity. And you rightly said the new corridor that is now proposed through land, landing up right in Greece through UAE and Saudis, that would be a major game changer. As Finance Minister quoted Prime Minister, this would be for many more decades a major solution to our connectivity problems.
On that note, thank you very much, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective. In a significant development, former Chief Minister of the Indian state of Jharkhand, Hemant Soren, was sent to judicial custody for a day in connection with land scam. He appeared before PMLA, that's Prevention of Money Laundering Act court in Ranchi, a day after he was arrested by Enforcement Directorate following his resignation from his post as the Chief Minister on Wednesday. The party declared State Transport Minister Champai Soren as their next Chief Ministerial candidate. The Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, Hindu devotees performed ritual worship in Varanasi's Gyanvapi Selar. Following the district court's approval, the basement barricades were opened. People offered prayers on Thursday morning. A significant security force has been stationed in the vicinity to avert any potential disturbances. Indian Navy has declared 2024 as the year of naval civilians to improve administration, efficiency and well-being of naval civilians by addressing all facets of civilian HR management in a time-bound manner. Major focus areas towards maximizing administrative efficiency, digital initiatives have been identified for implementation in 2024. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Thursday inaugurated the month-long Amar Ekshonai Book Fair in Dhaka. The book fair is the annual event of Bangladesh book lovers and publishers. At the function, PM Sheikh Hasina unveiled covers of 2 books titled Collected Works of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Volume 2 and Praner Mele Sheikh Hasina, published by Bangla Academy. The Prime Minister handed over the award to the 16 recipients under 11 categories. Bangla Academy organized the fair every year in the national capital. Meanwhile, Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission on Thursday filed a charge sheet against Nobel laureate Grameen Telecom chairman Dr. Muhammad Yunus. The 13 others in a case filed for embezzling 25 crore taka, that's roughly $2.37 million from the fund reserved for workers. According to the case documents, a decision was made on the company's 108th board meeting to open a bank account at Gulshan branch of Dhaka Bank Limited, but it was found that the account was opened a day before the decision was even made. More than 26 crore taka was transferred to the account on different occasions. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time for all the action from the world of sports. Let's talk about cricket. Depleted Team India is all set to lock horns with England in the second test at Visakhapatnam from Friday. India will be gunning to bounce back after they lost the first test by 28 runs, despite taking a first innings lead of 196 runs. England stunned India, courtesy marathon innings by Ali Pope and 7-wicket haul by Tom Hartley. In the second innings, big setbacks came for India when Jadeja and KL Rahul were also sidelined due to injury. Kuldeep Yadav is set to replace Jadeja, while there is a toss-up between Rajat Patidar and Sarfaraz Khan for KL Rahul's spot. England have announced their playing 11 ahead of the match, making 2 changes. Uncapped spinner Shoaib Bashir comes in as a replacement for the injured Jack Leach, while veteran James Anderson has replaced express pacer Mark Wood in the team. 7 times Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton is set for a shock switch from Mercedes to Ferrari in 2025 as replacement for Spanish driver Carlos Sainz, according to multiple media reports on Thursday. It means Hamilton, 39 years old, would team up with Charles Leclerc, Italian team announcing a week ago that the Monegasque had signed on for several more seasons. The move would be Ferrari's latest attempt to reignite their Formula One World Championship ambitions. The most famous team in the sport, but Ferrari have not had a world champion since Kimi Räikkönen in 2007, and their Constructors' Championship was claimed in the year 2008. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar and good night.